Well, welcome to the Saints Path to the Draft, presented by Dixie here on NewOrleansSaints.com. I'm John DeShazier, joined by Rod Walker, columnist and beat writer for the New Orleans Advocate. And Rod, we're going to start with this draft thing as we head to the NFL Combine from a Saints perspective. As you look at the Saints and the way they finished last season, obviously, play basically away from the NFC Championship game, winning it and going to the Super Bowl. What are the needs that you see from this team as they enter this phase of the offseason?
Well, I think, you go back to that one play, and this team really doesn't need anything, you wouldn't think, but obviously you want to improve every year. And I would think the tight end position would be the #1 thing, especially with Ben Watson retiring. And I think you always need offensive linemen, and they've had some injuries throughout these past couple of years and been able to plug in those holes. But I think you just want to make sure you always have some depth there. Up front, you may need some help on the defensive line as well. And I think backup quarterback, I know we don't know what the situation will be with Teddy Bridgewater. Taysom Hill, Sean Payton's talked about, he could be the future backup quarterback, but I think you have to solidify that position at some point, because obviously Breeze is getting older. He's 40. He'll turn 41, next January.
I guess if there is a year to not have a pressing, desperate need, it would be this year, because the Saints don't have a whole lot of picks. They don't have a first rounder, don't have a third rounder, don't have a fourth rounder. They do have a second rounder, a fifth, sixth, and seventh. Do you believe that they might be able to find a guy that they're looking for with those picks? And we also know that the Saints have been pretty active in free agency also. Yeah,
I think that's going to be the big key here, just to balance, what they do in free agency and what they do in the draft. But yeah, they made a lot of their moves last season. You basically you gave up a first-round pick for Davenport. You gave up the third-round pick for Teddy Bridgewater, fourth round for Eli Apple. So they've made some really good moves that have kind of put them in a good position. So it'll be interesting to see how they can balance those two things, free agency and the draft.
When you look at it from that perspective, if Marcus Davenport, I would imagine he needing to make a jump production-wise would be critical to what they want to do. We saw Eli Apple progress as the season went on and really turned it up toward the end, but Marcus Davenport had the injury early, had an injury late, had 4 sacks in the middle, 4.5 sacks, but he really needs to make another jump this season.
Yeah, he does. I think that's going to be because that goes back to last year's draft, and you want to see him make another big stride. He showed some flashes of what he can be, and what they saw in him in the first place, and I think his development is going to be really key to this next season. Especially, you got Okafor. We don't know what his situation is going to be, so you need those guys, those edge rushers like that, and so Davenport, his development is going to be really key.
You mentioned Okafor, and I also think you mentioned some help along the defensive line, because you're looking at defensive tackle. Sheldon Rankins is injured out the last season. Tyler Davison is a guy who's going to be a free agent, and also Alex Okafor is a guy who's a free agent. Do you, from the depth perspective in this draft along the defensive line, do you see some potential help for the Saints in that area?
You look at this draft and the defensive linemen outside of the quarterbacks. I think that's really the depth of this draft, and even though the Saints are drafting pretty late in the draft, there are some guys out there that are really good. There's even a local guy, Gerald Willis, who played here at Edna Karr. He was in that class with Leonard Fournette, and he's a guy that he'd probably be a second-round guy, and he'll be at the combine. And there are a lot of guys out there, I think.
All right. That's Rod Walker. I'm John DeShazier. Check out his work at the NFL Combine during the week, and also our work on NewOrleansSaints.com.